Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a new episode of the Marc Tech Analysis. This time we are reacting to SuperSaf's hopefully very comprehensive, this guy is known for very comprehensive, camera comparison between the iPhone 15 Pro Max and the Google Pixel 8 Pro. This is very exciting because, as you guys know, I do have a 15 Pro Max. In my opinion, it is currently the smartphone camera king. Obviously, Google has had a good long history of having amazing cameras on their phones, at least when it comes to stills. Videography has not always been quite their strong suit, but I can tell you that much, it seems to be meaningfully improved. Very much looking forward to that. Also, just to point out where I usually stand here is I don't have like a preference in that regard. I know I am an iPhone owner, right? So some people might say, oh, you just want the iPhone to win. I have always said that for me the iPhone wins because of its whole package. If the iPhone loses in any individual point, right, it loses in the camera to the Pixel, maybe it might not have the absolute greatest graphics performance for 6 months or something like that, not the latest 5G modem, though Apple is nowadays doing a really good job in compensating for when a new modem comes out from Qualcomm in the newest Android devices. Usually Apple has such a good antenna system nowadays. We've come a long way since the iPhone 4 that it really doesn't matter, so kudos to Apple. So to me, it still mostly comes down to iOS, the ecosystem, and of course I do like me a very high standard when it comes to certain features, cameras, performance, display, cellular connectivity, battery life, of course, all of that, and I think the 15 Pro Max is an absolutely amazing phone. But of course the Pixel 8 Pro has come out. I've waited patiently, or not so patiently, for all the reviews to launch of the Pixel 8 Pro. I want to in the future talk a little bit more in detail about the Tensor G3 processor. There are some benchmarks that are now coming out that are more detailed than what we got initially. That's really encouraging for me to have more data, because I don't just want to talk out of my ass. Sometimes with the nature of live streams that might happen, but I try to keep it to a minimum. I try to keep a relatively high quality standard. I hope anybody who watches can feel that, and if you feel it, can appreciate that. So, as always, please let me know if the audio is working well for you. Again, I do this through OBS Media Source Management, and sometimes it can get a little wonky on macOS. I will therefore not be scrolling backwards, because if you followed any of my prior streams, you will know that that has a tendency to really blow up in my face. I apologize for this stream being pretty unprepared, but I do still want to go work out today, so it's either now or basically in 8 hours from now, and I really didn't want to do that. So yeah, without holding you up any further, we now have a couple of people starting to join. Please let me know in the live chat again how audio and video quality is for you, what you would like to see me react to, like, or where you want to have my opinion for, what you have my opinion for. My English is leaving me as I keep talking, so let's get into it.
What's up guys, Saf here on SuperSaf TV, and welcome to the SuperSaf style camera comparison between the iPhone 15 Pro Max and the Google Pixel 8 Pro. We'll be testing out all aspects of the cameras: images, video, low light, telephoto, all of it. So let's kick off with images from...
Okay, I do have to make sure that my face is in a somewhat acceptable position. Obviously, I cannot cover up more of one image versus another, so I have to put myself in the middle. I hope this works.
The primary cameras. Now, both have excellent primary cameras with lots of...
Yeah, when we look at this, right, it's already hard to tell the difference, the preference. Like, I would say I like the walls overall more on the Pixel 8 Pro, but I like the chimney area, basically the roof, I guess, more on the iPhone. I like the grass a little more on the Pixel, but I prefer like the shadows in the front more on the iPhone. They're a little softer, look a little more natural. I prefer the sky a little bit on the iPhone, but I might prefer the background trees a little bit more in the Pixel. This is an absolute wash, basically. There's like the only thing that could decide an image like this is a legitimate level of detail difference. The iPhone definitely could come in here handy with its 24 megapixel default mode, but obviously you can set both cameras to capture at their native 50 or 48 megapixel resolutions, and at that point we would have to start talking about how convenient is it to enable that mode, how fast is it, are there any downsides to capturing like full resolution images versus a quarter resolution or half resolution images. But yeah, if we just look at this bright daylight, everything ever since like the iPhone 11, I would say, has had such good like daylight photography that it honestly is not an issue to me at all. Like, even if one is actually marginally better in some objective way, it doesn't matter to me. I would never base my smartphone purchase decision on something being 2 to 3% better in broad daylight.
Of detail and dynamic range. I've taken hundreds of pictures with both devices.
Here the iPhone wins because of better dynamic range overall, but it's a small margin, I would say.
And I did start noticing some trends. Now, the Pixel has what I call the Pixel look. You can generally tell when...
Yeah, I think it's actually interesting because Apple has really gone against a lot of what people consider the classic Apple or iPhone look when it comes to photos. Yes, they will usually come out more warm than a Pixel photo for the most part, but I would also say that Apple has kind of gone back on some of their over sharpening stuff from the previous gen, which I really like. I never enjoyed that. Apple also sometimes will be really smart in their color palette choice, right? They will sometimes make an image actually more blue or more cool even than a Pixel image, because they believe that it's the right thing for this specific picture. With the Pixel, you definitely get the Pixel look. It is still a very smart camera. I would say sometimes it tries to be a little too smart, given from what I've seen before, where it really tries to like maybe identify what specifically is in front of the camera, and instead of really like analyzing for the actual light around you, it tries to really do like aggressive skin tone correction, stuff like that. Not saying the iPhone is perfect in a way that the Pixel 8 Pro isn't. They both have their ups and downs. But for example, with these two images, it's like really hard to tell, right? Like it looks partially as if the iPhone lens might not have been fully clean, right? Because in such broad daylight, there really is no reason for the iPhone to look a little softer. My only belief here might be that the Pixel is really aggressively over sharpening, because when you look, again, you don't see my mouse pointer. I always have to point that out. I'm so funny during a stream from OBS here. So, but you look at the cliff that is like basically where the cars are, right? And you can see like a lot of detail that really most cameras would probably soften out a little, right? Because it's not really the detail that like your human eye would perceive at that distance. Not obviously, it's not bad. It doesn't look like aggressively over sharpened in like a bad way, but it's still something worth noticing. It seems to be also a change from previous Pixels in that regard, where I would say Pixels have actually been pretty good at maintaining a soft, natural look that you would kind of want to get from like a big full frame camera maybe.
A picture has been taken on a Pixel. It's quite punchy, lots of contrast. The iPhone usually goes towards more of a flatter image, which you can edit later. However, if you'd like...
Wait, that depends really on the mode. I mean, is it ProRAW? Because, yeah, ProRAW would do that.
Like, you can choose some photographic styles, give it more contrast and give it a more punchy look if you'd like. I generally tend to leave this as standard because I believe most people will be doing it.
Nah, I actually disagree with this at this point, which is, I believe the people who keep everything fully standard are the people who will generally also not care about the small differences. Well, I believe if you are doing this kind of like wider reaching comparison, and this is for example why I have been disappointed to not see more comparisons that include like full 50 megapixel images, because yeah, usually in sharpness comparisons the iPhone wins. I saw like one review where the iPhone like had generally worse like level of detail in images, even in its 24 megapixel mode versus Pixel's 12 megapixel mode, but that was one video. Like and this is why I didn't react to most of them. Like for example, I didn't react to Zone of Tech because I watched his video and it was not a bad video comparing the Pixel 8 Pro and the iPhone 15 Pro Max camera, but the problem with that video was like he said that what won was usually like 80% what I disagreed with. Like, and this is like, at least in like the controversial scenarios, right? And I really couldn't like post such a video because it would look like so fucking biased from either side. Like it's even unclear what exactly I would prefer, but I know I would be called an Apple sheep because of the nature of this channel. But there were examples where clearly the Pixel had won, or where he clearly like showed like low light images of the Pixel that I was like, really? Is the Pixel that bad in low light? Did you not correct for like the same length of like night side versus night mode? So I'm reacting to SuperSaf. No pre-watch on this video, but I do hope it's a good one. I do know he tries to really deliver high quality content, and this is why I'm reviewing him, or analyzing him, I guess.
That as well. But I've just been really impressed with how good both of these cameras are.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, like, it's this kind of images, it's like potato, right? I mean, like, yeah, the iPhone has like more pleasing sky, but throw that image into Magic Editor on the Pixel and you get whatever sky you want, basically. It's like, yeah, I do prefer the iPhone image overall. The sky is much more interesting in that image, but I can also capture the same image on the iPhone with Pro RAW, and then I know it will be a little less saturated, and then it will be nicer to edit afterwards.
Now, one area where I did lean towards the Pixel more is with dynamic range. You can see here in this example.
Yeah, this is where I might get a little controversial, because I know what people mean by that, but I have a small problem when people are like trying to take pictures against the sun, and then like the image gets like super bright, and when you zoom in it doesn't look natural at all at that point, because like those leaves on the front tree, basically, like they don't look quite like that to you. They might look brighter, sure, than they do on the iPhone image, right? The human eye, we have two eyes, we are actually really good at perceiving contrast and stuff like that. But look at just how it looks, as if the sky is shining up on that tree up from the front, not from the back. So this is where I think the dynamic range focus gets like overstated. I think ever since like the iPhone 11, and since cameras, basically smartphone cameras, became good enough to even be compared this way, in my opinion, I think the iPhones have sucked a little bit in HDR. HDR is the wrong word, because iPhones are really actually amazing at HDR when it comes to the actual, like, you know, data that is saved as HDR, how many colors there are, what the contrast is that is saved in the actual file. But iPhone sucked in like direct like sunlight versus like, oh, the shadows got too dark, oh, or it might might get try to blow everything out to compensate for it, and the iPhone 15 Pro Max fixes it, but it does not try to overcorrect it as if the light is suddenly coming from a different direction. It will not do that. Now you could try to maybe do some compensation for that with photographic styles if you really want an image that is closer to the one on the Pixel here, but to me it's I really don't have a preference, because I can admit that the iPhone is not quite as good, if it tried even, to bring out all the highlights in this image. However, I can also say that I genuinely don't really like when an image is that bright as the Pixel image here is. So it's hard here for me to tell.
We've got a lot of light coming from the background, but the Pixel, in my opinion, has maintained the shadow detail better. Now, one new feature on the iPhone is that it shoots at 24 megapixels by default in good conditions. This means you will be getting more detail and you'll be able to crop in further at default on the images from the iPhone. But the Pixel still gives you very sharp results, and I'm assuming that's down to the processing. Now, both devices can shoot at the maximum resolution. You've got 50 on the Pixel, 48 on the iPhone. And when we do compare these side by side at 100%, once again, I do think because of the processing, the Pixel does appear sharper. Now, I really wanted to test this, so...
Yeah, what you're now saying is not genuine detail, that's over-sharpening. It is. It just simply is. Like, in broad daylight, there shouldn't be a scenario where a 12 megapixel image is sharper than a 24. Now, when it comes to their native modes, it's a little harder to predict. Generally, the Pixel 8 Pro has a slightly smaller sensor, but then also a slightly wider aperture, so there's not much hardware difference here. Obviously, the sensors are made by different companies in that way, so a sensor size is not a perfect comparison point here. Yeah, but sometimes people really like to mistake like over sharpening for actual detail. Just because a line is like super aggressively like sharp does not actually mean that it reflects reality.
I did some really tricky tests at the high resolution, and I did find that the Pixel did perform better overall. If you look at this image, if we go in 100%, the detail has been better maintained on...
Wait, what did the iPhone even focus on though here, right? Like, I mean, it looks better, it looks over-sharpened as fuck, and the iPhone looks way too soft. What was the actual focus on? Was it on the sky? Like, if we zoomed in, would the iPhone, like, look way sharper in the sky? That's such a weird thing here. Look, like, it's... Like, you can even see, like, that little house in the back of the Pixel image, but you cannot do that on the iPhone. Which I would never understand why that wouldn't be possible with, like, what? I've never had problems like this on the iPhone.
The Pixel compared to the iPhone. Now, moving on to low light images from the primary.
Okay, that really weren't enough images. You said you took hundreds.
Cameras. I think both do really well once again. In this example, I do prefer the Pixel. I think it's maintained the lights better and it's sharper. However, in this example, I do prefer the iPhone. Yeah. And I also prefer the iPhone indoors in low light, as you can see from these two examples here.
Agreed.
Now, when you are using night mode on both devices, they do opt for a few seconds.
Okay, those images look very different. I mean, the iPhone is brighter, but I guess I would need to see it really zoomed in to see which one maintained more detail. When I look at the roof, they both look pretty similar. The left and the right house look like a little artifacty on the iPhone for me almost, but then they look completely softened out on the Pixel. Like the roofs there and a little bit of like the right fence part, like just look like there's zero detail on the Pixel, while on the iPhone it just looks whatever detail there was got a little lost in like some of the processing,
which they feel is best. And for example, in this image, I do prefer the iPhone. Both did around 3 seconds. The iPhone image.
Yeah, by the way, I have covered it in like a previous reaction video, I believe to SuperSaf's as well, which is I hate it when reviewers will be like, oh, one camera suggested I do 1 second and the other suggested I do 3 seconds. This is why I gave one phone 3 seconds and the other 1 second. I'm like, dude, there is like zero scientific method here. And he's like, oh, it's automatic. And I'm like, the slider is right there. It takes literally zero effort to change that on the iPhone. Like, I don't know if it's more complicated to change like the duration of night sight on the Pixel, but I never understood that desire to be like, oh yeah, like it really needs to be like 100% automatic. I have basically zero respect for the fact that a user will tune their result here. It's also like if you take that image once, right, and you took it with 1 second of night mode duration, right, and it didn't work out, guess what the regular user will do? He or she will try out something like, or they, I should correct myself in that regard, they will try to capture the image again, and then they will likely give night mode a few more seconds. This is why it's so weird to me that he's like, oh, they're automatically both doing this, and in this specific case they both like doing 3 seconds. I'm like, that's great and all, but shouldn't you have made sure that they are both 3 seconds and not just lucked out into them both being 3 seconds? And I'm saying that also for the benefit of the Pixel. What if the Pixel by default wants to only do like 1 second or something like that? Like, should it really suffer in comparisons if the iPhone more aggressively suggests like 3 or 4 seconds? No, of course not.
Is sharper with more detail in the brick areas. It's also not blown out the highlights in the window. Now let's look at ultra-wide images. Once again, both have excellent ultra-wide cameras with lots of detail and great...
I believe the ultra-wide is now 48 or 50 megapixels, so I expect it to be sharper on the Pixel 8 Pro. The iPhone's ultra-wide really needs a higher resolution at this point.
Range. The Pixel is slightly wider, and once again, I do think it has overall better dynamic range. If we take a look at...
I mean, in this image, it literally does not. I mean, the sun is blown out. I mean, sure, the foliage in the front is brighter, but that's literally just one small part. The iPhone literally maintained more part of the image with a better look.
This example, you can see that the iPhone image does appear to be brighter, but it has blown out the highlights towards the sunset. The Pixel, on the other hand, has maintained all of that detail.
Yeah, exactly. You see, guys, I'm 100% fair here. In this scenario, of course, the iPhone had worse dynamic range. The ultra-wide is quite an old sensor at this point. I expect it to be not as great in that regard. So, yeah, 100% a win for the Pixel in this image. I have zero problems admitting that.
Without losing anything in the shadow areas. Here's another example. Once again, I think this demonstrates how good the HDR is on the Pixel. Now, for the ultra-wide camera
too bright, but
light,
okay.
This image, I would say, is a bit of a draw, but here the Pixel does have more detail and it's a sharper overall image. And once again, in this image, although it's very close, I think the Pixel is sharper. Now, you can take macro shots with both devices, and I don't know how this fly stayed still while I was actually using cameras, but both do a great job. You can go in a little bit closer on the iPhone compared to the Pixel, but overall I think both do very, very good when it comes to the macro cameras. Now, before we continue, just a quick reminder.
I would say I'd probably give the overall edge in the ultra-wide camera to the iPhone, to the Pixel, I'm sorry. This is what happens when you give it a new sensor and stuff like that. Apple is overdue us an upgrade, not just because, yeah, I mean, they upgraded it like last year, I believe, right? They added like macro mode on the 13 Pro, and then I think the 14 Pro had a better ultra-wide hardware-wise. Regardless, we need all cameras to now be 48 megapixel. We need all of them to be like next-gen sensors that are built in mind with like better HDR technology. HDR technology is not just software, and it's not just your large aperture and stuff like that. It also goes to really improves if you have a modern sensor with good image capabilities. Like Apple, it really needs to upgrade both the ultra ultra wide sensor and even the sensor for the 5x camera at this point. Now granted, they just made the sensor a little larger than on the one on the previous 3x, and I don't quite know how their tetraprism design would work with a significantly larger sensor. Maybe they want to keep it for like 2 years, this specific sensor arrangement, because they really would then want to get the next gen truly right. Supposedly we're getting a 48 megapixel ultra wide next year, and maybe then we would get also a 48 megapixel zoom camera the year after that. But really kudos to Pixel for having like 50 megapixel sensors on basically every camera.
If you're enjoying this video so far, then
except for the front facing camera, which from everything that I've seen is like, front facing cameras don't really matter to me that much. I don't take that many selfies, though it has been getting a little more because of how happy I am with the results on the 15 Pro Max. I still would call it the least worthwhile camera there, except for video calls. It's just yeah, like we'll see how it performs in his tests.
please do consider subscribing. We're almost at 2 million subscribers, and
Please consider also subscribing to my video. Please consider liking and sharing this video. Please consider supporting me directly through either Patreon, which you can find a link in my channel description, or you can send me a super chat or a super sticker to support this channel directly financially.
I'm working on a detailed comparison between the Pixel 8 Pro and the iPhone 15 Pro Max, where we'll be looking at all of the other differences as well as the cameras, so you're not going to want to miss that. Now let's talk about zoom, because this gave me some really interesting results. So both devices have by default 1x, 2x, which is using the middle part of the sensor to give you lossless zoom. And it is very, very close when we are shooting at 2x, but when we switch to 5x, that's when the optical zoom cameras of both kick in. And once again, I do think it is very close. But of course, I really wanted to test out which one of these will be better for zoom. So I did lots of tests, and I also tried extending the zoom. So when we do go to 10x, although it is very close, I started to notice a trend where the iPhone did manage to capture more detail. This is more obvious when we go all the way to 25x.
Well, that really shouldn't be happening. What? That's a lot more detail. Look, the entire facade of the building is like, what? And Google was like the company that launched Super Res Zoom. Wait, what the fuck is Apple doing so right with the tetraprism camera? Is it their image stabilization that they've coupled with it? I mean, it really pays. Like, Apple has so many fucking people working on their cameras. I think they really know what they're doing, man.
If you take a look at
say hello to our
on
little
the
visitor
boards,
here.
you can see the square textures on the iPhone way better than you can do on the Pixel. The Pixel has kind of blended them all in. The Pixel can also go up to 30 times, but it's not really doing much for the detail. I still
by the way,
I'm pretty sure I did do an extended zoom test.
Yeah, I think you can really tell, by the way, here, which is, for example, look at like the line around the actual like build tower, right? You can actually see that the line is like really like straight and sharp on the Pixel, but when you actually look at like the upper portion here, you will find that the iPhone has actual detail that is not possible to like maintain through simple over sharpening. Like the Pixel does where it what it can when it comes to over sharpening, but my god, the iPhone has like twice the level of detail here. That's amazing. I did not expect that.
On multiple different subjects, and every time the iPhone just produced sharper results.
Guys, I fully came in from everything that I've seen prior. I expected the Pixel would win with the ultra wide a little, and it did, right? I expected it to win actually quite by a decent margin in zoom, but then I expected for the iPhone to win in the main camera, the front facing camera, and videography in general. But man, the fact that the iPhone is like kicking its butt in zoom really is like, we'll have to really see how the main camera like really performs in like maybe more specific scenarios like portrait and stuff. Like I know it's like a special part of his reviews, but portraits, to me, the iPhone automatically won because it has automatic portraits. That to me is like the most innovative thing with portraits, because those portraits actually work really well. I know there's technically some way to do that on Android. Fuck me, it does not work as well as on the iPhone, believe me. But yeah, I did not expect the iPhone to perform that well in zoom tasks. Wow, guess really Apple is doing something right with the, guess the old saying of like not first but like best or like unique saying with Apple turned out to be true. There are now rumors that Samsung might give up on their 10x zoom camera and only go with 5x in the next Samsung S24 Ultra, but like a larger sensor and better optics to go with it. It seems like Google really and like other Android manufacturers really had like the right idea by going with 5x, but then Apple came in and just randomly said, yeah, boom, but our 5x is by far the best, to the point where if you want to actually do 10x, except for the best light scenario for a non-moving object, this is still better than Periscope.
The Pixel
I'm blown away.
Did also struggle to focus at those extended.
Yep. That's the sensor image stabilization on that camera.
Now, of course, we had to test out zoom in low light as well. So when we do go to 2x, the iPhone here is doing better. You can't.
I mean, it's not just doing better, but like the colors, you have to understand like the dynamic. But ironically, this is exactly the dynamic range situation. For one, you can still see green under trees in the background, right? Sure, maybe it is a tad too warm versus what reality was, but look at this. Like, look at the difference here. You actually see the detail on the pavement, and I imagine he will zoom in. Oh, that's 2x. Wait, what? That's not even the much better. Wait, that's the main camera? Oh my god, the iPhone is destroying the Pixel in low light. What? I did not expect that.
The text that I'm holding up, whereas the Pixel is starting to struggle. Now this is more obvious when we kick.
Oh my god! I thought that 2x image was like I thought it was already like 5x. I assumed it was like taken from even further away. My god, like Apple's low light algorithms are absolutely unmatched. Jesus, I did not expect that.
5 times zoom. So here on the iPhone, you've got really good usable.
This looks like 2 generations ahead. It does not even just look like it definitely does not look as if the Pixel came out a month after the iPhone. It looks like it came out like at least 13 months before the iPhone.
Really read the text that I'm holding up.
And by that I mean that it predates the previous generation, right?
Actually quite a bit of a struggle here on the Pixel. Now I think this might be because the Pixel is actually still using the primary camera to get
No, don't do that. Actually test it. You can see which sensor is used. Don't give me that garbage. That is wrong. You as a reviewer have to give us images that are actually coming from the sensor. I know you want to provide us the default experience, but you really then fuck it, force it at some point. Use a pro app at that point. Hell, I believe you have like pro controls on the Pixel camera app included. There should be a button there to like force it into 5x. No, don't do a cop out here.
And then cropping in. Whereas the iPhone, because it has a wider aperture for the telephoto camera, it's actually able to capture in more light. Now if we go to 10 times...
Really? Guys, I'll just briefly do some research. I know GSM Arena always has like all the individual camera specs really nicely lined up. I know the sensor is larger, but like... is it? I didn't think the iPhone had a much wider aperture on its 5x camera. Here, no, it does not have a wider aperture. It's a 48 megapixel f2.8 or 113 millimeter telephoto, so it actually does not even zoom in quite as far. And it's a 1 by 2.55 inch sensor, which is larger than the one on the iPhone. So no, stop it with that bullshit. Like, I think he just took what he knew from the from the iPhone versus the Galaxy S23 Ultra, and just like basically copy pasted that information, even though it's not applicable. But no, the iPhone has a smaller sensor and the same aperture. The iPhone is at 2.8, right? iPhone 15 Pro Max. The iPhone has my cat is running around the laptop. I hope she doesn't throw anything off the table. Camera. Where's the camera? Wait, why? What? Oh, okay. Here, it's a 12 megapixel f2.8 sensor. That is 120 millimeters, so it zooms actually a little farther, and it's a 1 by 3.06 inch sensor, so it's actually significantly smaller than the 1 by 2.5 inch sensor there. No, it's really better. Maybe fundamentally the sensor is better, even though Pixel is like going with a 48 megapixel setup, but it really seems like Apple has the actual super res zoom technology here, even though Pixel is the one to claim it.
Once again, clear win here for the iPhone. And then I did extend all the way to 25 times, and the Pixel really did struggle to focus at 25 times.
But it seems like the Pixel did some software adjustments at that point, probably over sharpening a little. It looks better at 25 almost than it does at 5x.
Multiple times. It just got one photo in focus, and still I do prefer the iPhone. Now let's talk about portraits. So the Pixel has by default either portraits at 1.5 or 2x, whereas the iPhone has 1x, 2x, as well as 5x. So using the
wait, there are no portraits that you can capture with the 5x camera on the Pixel? Why is nobody covering that shit?
At 1.5.
Yeah, those are completely incomparable images. Why are you doing this? The iPhone can capture 35 millimeter equivalents, which would be 1.5x zoom, which then also uses a slightly different algorithm to preserve more detail. So, no idea. Again, this is not even automatic mode. You can literally tap yourself into 1.5x. You don't even have to do a regular zoom pinch motion.
5 on the Pixel, on 1 on the iPhone. Both are doing good overall, but if you do look closer at the Pixel image around my hair and my ears, it is struggling. Now, this is exactly the reason why I don't dye my gray hair or shave it off. It's purely for these camera comparisons.
All right, I like the dude. I know I shit on him sometimes. I do like the level of detail that he puts into his videos, but I think he's a genuinely funny guy. I appreciate the work he does. I just think there's like 10% more research that needs to be done. I obviously understand he does a lot of like analysis before all the data is out, but at this point he is posting something today. It came out like an hour before I did the stream, so I'm actually really on point today when it comes to time. So no, I like him. It's just sometimes I will shit on him because I'm not a super big fan of his method, but hey, that really opens me up to like criticize some stuff that I might not be able to criticize in general, because some people will like try to correct and really try to get the same image, and it's really not the default experience. I agree with that, but then he goes out of his way to really make it the absolute default, where apparently the regular consumer is too frightened to click any button or do the zoom motion, even though we've all been doing it since the introduction of the iPhone, even before that. So no, this is a little too far. Also, like, yeah, I've seen that the iPhone has like apparently best in class now, like detection for like for like portraits. Did not expect that to happen from everything that I've seen before that. The S23 Ultra was actually a little bit better than the 14 Pro Max. So kudos to Apple. The A17 is doing a lot of good work here.
Phone, it's actually isolated me really well, and it hasn't got these errors that we've got on the Pixel. Now, if we do compare like for like, 2x versus 2x, the Pixel once again is struggling.
I don't know. Like, I don't know. I guess I should ask him in which image he prefers like his skin tone. For one, look at his forehead, right? You can see that there's way more detail actually preserved in the iPhone. Like, and I do prefer his skin tone so much more. It's so much warmer, so much more lively than the slight grayish, even slightly bluish tint that the Pixel leaves. Like, I know the iPhone is known to be a little too warm, and I would wager that the real truth is probably somewhere in between those images, but preference here really falls on the iPhone. Also, when I look at the t-shirt, there genuinely is more detail in the iPhone. Maybe the Pixel didn't quite get the focus 100% right. I don't know what exactly is happening here.
A little bit on my ears and my hair, whereas the iPhone has done such a good job. Now, I do think this might be coming down to the LiDAR scanner that the iPhone has.
I don't know at what distance the LiDAR scanner actually does a good work, right? Because yes, I understand the LiDAR scanner would still work at the distance that he is to the camera here, 2x obviously, so that's 48mm equivalent, so he's standing probably pretty close overall still. It's just LiDAR is like a lot of like light moving out. I don't know how much detail it has still on that distance, right? I know it would be like enough to recognize the walls around you and stuff like that, but for example, if you really want to have like basically cat level detail, you would want to run around an object with like 15 to 30 centimeter distances. I don't know like how much work LiDAR is genuinely doing here.
Depth information. And a new feature that we've got on the iPhone, which you may have heard about, is the fact that when you are taking regular photos of people, or if you tap on a subject, then it's also going to save depth information, and you can turn those pictures into portraits later. What you may not know is that Google has been able to turn normal photos into portraits for quite a while. This is within the image editor on the Google.
Yep, this is fundamentally not as good as on the iPhone. I know that. I've tested it. But I've tested it a year ago, so I cannot talk about it in the Pixel 8 Pro. This is why I'm being a good boy and just listening. I hope that in the future I can do more direct testing of Android devices on this channel. Unfortunately, all my friends who have been like in the business basically of getting Android devices, and by that I mean they were in the cycle to upgrade finally, like I tested all of their devices. There is no device that I get to keep anymore for a week or something like that. And anybody else who's thinking of upgrading will probably be getting an iPhone, and that is pretty much worthless to me. So yeah, it is what it is, unfortunately. Hell, if somebody here wants to support this channel directly, you can also send me an Android device to test out, because I'm definitely not getting any presents by Team Pixel, believe me that.
Photos app, and it can do a good job, so you can actually shoot at 1x and then turn that into a portrait later on both devices. Now here, yes, both are actually doing really well overall, but I still think that the iPhone has better edge.
I think like when again, I cannot scroll back unfortunately, but if you want to, you can see that like around the leg areas and stuff like that, the Pixel still tries to apply a level of portraity that is just unnatural, because that would still be in focus for the most part, right? With like a real camera with like a large sensor. What most cameras would probably want to do, or what most photographers would prefer to do probably, is really do portraits that are like always without the legs, basically. Basically like the torso and head, preferably only like a bust, or maybe only just the head. But because if you want to still like focus on the entire body, then it's very unlikely that the camera would be like so sharpened in onto the exact focal distance that suddenly like a centimeter behind your legs, everything becomes unfocused. That's just not how natural blur works. So my question is like, yeah, I know it works, by the way. It has worked for a while. Google does some decent job with AI. This is why I'm never saying that Apple is absolutely first. Because let's be honest, the Lumia 1020 did all the Pixel stuff years before the Pixel did it. Including like best shot, right? With that head removal feature. And all the refocusing stuff from the iPhone also was there. So to me, it's not about being first. It's really about doing it well and integrating it well enough. Not saying the Pixel is doing it poorly. I still think it's by far the best Android device when it comes to stills photography, and I would say by far the best Android device when it comes to extra photo functionality. But no, it's not as good as what the 15 Pro Max is doing nowadays.
If you take some regular photos at 5x, you'll notice that we do get a natural bokeh effect because of that focal length. And although you don't have the 5x portrait option on the Pixel, I'm not sure why they don't do this. They should. You can.
Yeah. Again, this he was still. Let me just explain to you what was happening. He was standing still close enough with the 5x for the main camera to, with a relatively large sensor, to still provide you a somewhat natural bokeh. Obviously, we had like a full like 1-inch sensor. It would look even better, but. This is, by the way, why portrait modes like this, like capturing a portrait photo where the groin area is included, is silly. It's just not how... It's not like a bad comparison by itself, like purely scientifically. Also, the iPhone's grass looks like ass. I don't like how just how vibrant it is. Grass usually does not look that vibrant. But yeah, it's like... You know, it's like it's not absolutely the right approach, unfortunately. But yeah, the iPhone wins, by the way. It's like an actual portrait image here. It's no comparison.
Again, go in and add the depth after the fact. And this actually looks really good on both devices.
Yeah.
I really can't pick a winner. The Pixel also does do a better job at 5x of making portraits compared to the 1x and the 2x. Here's another example at 5x. Again, I think both are doing really, really good.
Wait,
although I do prefer the iPhone because it hasn't...
I think he misspoke. I think he meant the iPhone does a better job, because he said the Pixel does a better job, but then he immediately presented an iPhone image that won.
On my forehead as much. Now, portraits in low light, 1.5 versus 1. The iPhone, once again, great with edge detection. The Pixel is really struggling.
Oh, yeah, you cannot see my mouse pointer, but when we were just talking about the groin area, look between his legs. This is a very bad artifact to have in like a 2023 flagship when it comes to like portrait edge detection. I don't see anything like that on the iPhone. I don't know how it looks like between his arms, right? I cannot tell if that area is like perfectly blurred or if it just is not sharp at all in that area. But then also the right edge of his face, right, which I guess it's like the left edge, but it's the right side in the video. It's like it looks terrible. Like, why? My god, the iPhone wins like by a 2-generational leap here.
Gray hair. Now, I know a lot of you guys are probably saying the Pixel does great portraits for me and I don't have the gray hair, but guys, I am a tech reviewer. I have to test out tricky situations to really see which one does better.
By the way, I fully agree with him. Like, people always ask me, like, well, always, ever since my channel got decently big, right? They ask me, like, well, what about portrait mode and stuff like that? Well, you will notice that I don't have like the most like obedient hair, I guess one might say, not the most docile hair. It curls, it moves into folds where it shouldn't. It falls where it shouldn't sometimes, and this is medium length for me at most. No, this isn't even quite medium length, but I prefer them short these days. And people are like, well, how good is the portrait mode with hair? And I'm like, it's good. And people are like, well, is the iPhone 15 Pro Max not perfect? I'm like, not with my hair, it isn't. Because nothing is perfect with my hair except for natural bokeh from a really large sensor. So this is why, to me, his comparisons are actually pretty interesting, because I get to see how the Pixel struggles with, like, his hair also creates like almost artifacts, I would say, right? It kind of looks from afar as if it's like a light reflection on a bald head. So I see why the Pixel would sometimes mistake it. But yeah, but there's no comparison. The iPhone wins by such a wide margin in these images. It's like, yeah, getting gladder and gladder that I bought the iPhone without waiting for anything else.
2x, once again, the iPhone. Although there is more noise on the iPhone image, when it comes to edge detection, it is...
What? Where's the noise? Like, no. There's noise in the Pixel image as well. You know what the Pixel does, though? It over-sharpens. Like, look at some of the jacket things. It looks like his jacket is like... as if there's like no soft element on it, as if it's just made of like 4 metal plates, like with some textile on top. No. Noisiness, nope, I don't see it. Maybe if he were to really zoom in far, maybe I would see it, but no, the iPhone wins. And I mean, he said it himself, it's like, it's no question here. But I did not expect, like, again, look at his groin area, look at SuperSaf's groin, and you will see some of the differences that obviously Apple has kind of done a really good job with portrait edge detection.
Better. And final example here.
Yeah, this is the kind of image I don't care which wins, because it looks like ass on both, right? This is where I genuinely have to ask reviewers sometimes, please don't waste too much time with images that are genuinely completely useless, especially from a smartphone. There is no reason to even show this. It looks like ass on both.
Again, more noise on the iPhone image in that low light situation, but...
by the way, between the arms, I have no idea which one did it correctly, because it looks bad on both. You can see again that the Pixel has like this, like between the groin area, it does do no bokeh whatsoever. Which starts looking really unnatural, because at absolutely the same height, right, with the pavement behind him, it's it's blurred out, while it's not in his groin area, even in parts that are actually further away. So yeah, that's not great result.
It is doing much better for the depth. I do think this comes down to the LiDAR scanner. Right, now let's move on to selfies. So I think both take really good selfies. But there's a few things I noticed straight away. The Pixel mostly does better when it comes to maintaining accurate skin tones. Google has this thing called real tone, where it's really going to try to maintain your skin color. And you can really see this here. Now, I would say in this particular example, the dynamic...
Really? Is it that much more accurate? Okay.
Range on
I mean, I will not argue with him what his natural skin tone is.
The iPhone is better. If you look at the Tesla logo in the background.
Yeah, by the way, dynamic range winner when it comes to front-facing cameras, iPhone. Absolutely nobody close, even for some reason at this point. I have no idea how they did that with like their new Smart HDR5. I don't know if like their front-facing camera previously ran like on a maybe Smart HDR2 silently still, and they just called it Smart HDR4. But yeah, the comprehensive move to Smart HDR5, really front-facing camera, iPhone, dynamic range, absolute winner.
It's been blown out a little bit on the...
but in this specific image, by the way, because the light is really good in general, right? It's like it's not too contrasty in that way. I do prefer the pixel image overall. I do like how his sweater looks. Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't care about the dynamic range in this specific image.
Whereas it's been maintained on the iPhone. Here's another example. The Pixel once again trying to maintain my accurate skin color, whereas the iPhone is...
Yeah, look at the background, right? This is not how leaves look like, right? This is over sharpened. The shadows are actually worse on the Pixel in this case than on the iPhone. But my God, like, really? He prefers his skin tone on the Pixel one? Really? Well, I guess this is one point for like unnaturalness, I guess, in this specific scenario. Like, he has to understand though, like, his skin tone of outside will not be the same as it is under like cold studio lights. His skin tone under warm sun should be a little warmer. Yeah, again, we can argue if the iPhone might be a little too warm, but like, really? I find him way more attractive on the iPhone image here.
More towards the red side. Now, one thing that I did find is...
That's not red, that's brown. I mean, sure, it's maybe a little more reddish brown, but here it looks closer to even him in the studio, I think. And he, like, look at his cheek, right? He has, like, light shining directly on him in a way. Like, come on.
That I think the iPhone tries to give you more of a pleasing selfie, whereas the Pixel tries to give you more of an accurate selfie. But in doing so...
But in this case, it's not just accurate, right? Look at the over-sharpening around his hair, right? It looks like his hair was, like, drawn with like a magic marker on top of his head, right? Like, you can see, like, individual hairs, but then you can even with... By the way, this is a good video save file, I guess. I don't think you will be able to actually see that detail, but, like, you can see the individual hairs that are like really like over sharpened in the Pixel image, but then you can also see like almost like little artifacts of them breaking up, right? Because over sharpening will also create artifacts. It doesn't magically make something much better. So no, in this case it's the iPhone by a long shot. I have no idea. Like, I know maybe again he could say this would like the Pixel is technically more accurate in a way, but for a guy who previously preferred like brighter images that the Pixel created, it's kind of shocking that in this case he does not prefer the iPhone over the Pixel.
Have a tricky situation like this, it can struggle. You can see in the Pixel it's really grade things out.
Yeah, I mean, come on, like, and this is pretty much the continuation of the last image. This is just taken to a more extreme. Again, iPhone, way better dynamic range, way better color reproduction, way better skin tone reproduction. So I really have no idea what he means here. With like, I think I honestly think this comes down to marketing, because Pixel talks about things like what is it called? Like, True Tone is like the iPhone's like display tuning, but like, what is true? Was it True Tone? Real Tone, I think. It's because Google talks about it and advertises like, look how natural your skin is. Like, you have like a cognitive bias to look at an image and say like, yeah, I guess I see that. But do you really think that Apple has not put a ton of effort into making sure that like skin tones look really good on iPhones? Like, iPhones sell like really well in the United States, right? That has a large percentage of its population being like African Americans, Chinese Americans, in comparison to many other countries, right? Then iPhones sell like really also well in Arab countries, right? Especially the richer ones. Of course, Apple does like a ton of research on like skin tone science. Like, come on. Like, do you really think because Google has a branding for it that it's like magically like 10 times more effort put into it? This is why I'm saying that I never buy like Apple's like claims based on just marketing. It's just when we talk about terms like Retina display, I can, for example, very well explain to you what a Retina display, what a liquid Retina display is, what a Super Retina display is, what a Super Retina XDR display is, right? And while those are all stupid terms, in the end they are not meaningless, because Retina stands for a pixel sharpness that is higher than you can discern with average eyesight at the average viewing distance that you would have with this specific device. It slightly depends on the sub-pixel density as well, because for example, Pentai-OLED does not have the same sub-pixel density if the pixel density is the same as a regular RGB LCD, for example, right? But then a liquid Retina display is just a Retina with like curved corners so that it looks nice. And then XDR stands for extreme or extended dynamic range. Super Retina stands for OLED Retina, right? All those terms have a meaning. It's not like Apple had like Super Retina 2.2 or something. And the same thing with like Real Tone is like, yeah, it's we know you put some effort into understanding skin tones, but it's not like you are unique in this aspect. You don't need to give like every single feature a new name. Like, a lot of people don't understand that when Photonic Engine was introduced in the iPhone 14 series, right? It really wasn't just a branding. They actually had like new light sensors specifically to like manage the imaging science, right? Sure, you could say, oh, did it really need a new term? And I would argue no, but at least it stood for something, where with Real Tone, it's like that software will still evolve, and we will still probably call it Real Tone. Maybe at some point we'll call it Real Tone 2.0 or something, or True Tone. Hell, I cannot scroll back, I apologize. But like, yeah, I hate it when reviewers buy into marketing more than I do, and I'm a fucking regular consumer with like an amateur channel.
And it's not looking very flattering. This is something that was similar with the Pixel 7 Pro. Now on the iPhone, although it's not giving you accurate colors, especially if you look towards my...
Neither does the Pixel. Your skin is not gray, dude. Like, come on. The sky was not gray either.
It's not really maintained the black the Pixel has. The skin tones are more pleasing, and it is a more pleasing selfie overall. Rather than
the problem with like, this is why I always like, I really like to talk about the selfie camera in a highly different light than I do about the actual real cameras. I've said time and time again, I don't care much about selfies, and this is because I prefer to have like natural images that look as close to real life as possible, while still being slightly tuned so that I can post them right away without doing too much, right? This is why I for years criticized for the iPhone to be too warm, and this is why I've historically always used Pro RAW once I actually had access to it with the 13 Pro Max. This is why I did not upgrade from the 10s Max to the 11 Pro series, because the 11 Pro, even though it had objectively sharper images and better focus and stuff like that, the images just look too warm for me. So to me, but with the front-facing camera, the sensor is so small, there's like no real stabilization there. Like, you just won't get the same like real result that you could get from a much larger sensor on the back. So the only thing that I care about from the front-facing camera is give me a nice, sharp, somewhat pleasing result as I take it, and then let me completely forget about it. Like, there is not enough detail in selfies for me to go back and edit them. I don't like the angle at which you usually take selfies, but hell, sometimes you go out on a date, you want to take a selfie together. Sometimes your cat does something cute and she's like so close to you that literally your only options are either the selfie camera or the ultra wide camera, and then you have to hold it like that, and it can also be a little unflattering. So no, no. In this case, I completely disagree with his take that the Pixel is more natural. I think it's just worse, and I think that the old sensor that they're using is really, really biting them in the ass here.
That sort of desaturated look that the Pixel's gone for. Now, looking at portraits from the selfie cameras, again, both excellent, great edge detection.
This is not a
but I would
complicated
have to
scenario.
give the edge to the iPhone, and that's because it does really well with hair. With the Pixel, it kind of gives you a solid cutout, which can look quite fake, especially if you look at this example.
Yeah,
here.
it looks like a
The iPhone
line
gives
was
you a
like
much
cut.
more
It's like a
natural
buzz
cutout,
cut
and it
portrait.
still maintains the hair. Now, selfies in low lights, I think both are really struggling here.
Again,
The Pixel-
garbage on both. Garbage on both. I wouldn't use either. It goes to the same as with like the portrait low lights stuff that he had shown.
Once again, doing that thing of completely desaturating the image and giving it a bit of a weird color. The iPhone is giving a very red skin tone here,
Yeah.
but I still think it's doing better compared to the Pixel. However, when we use the front-facing flashes where they illuminate the displays, the Pixel doing much better here.
Nope, it does not. Like, I know that the iPhone has a really bad habit of taking like a non-sharp image when you're doing the front like illumination thing, but like he looks white in this image. And I know that people can be like white passing, but he's not, and that's completely fine, obviously. But like here, the incredible flash here just makes him look whiter than I am, and I'm actually white. Jesus. I hate that I even have to talk about this because I have to disagree with him, and it makes me look like I'm some kind of like brown supremacist, almost like telling him no, like your skin more if it's a little brown.
Colors of the black and just giving a overall more pleasing shot compared to the iPhone. Now, a few things I do have to mention about the Pixel are the new software features. Google is all about the software, and we've seen Magic Eraser before where you can remove things from, say, the background. I wasn't a huge fan of this, but Magic Editor has really improved with AI. So now, not only can you remove things from a picture.
I think I've said that in MKBHD's review yesterday. Since then, I've actually gone back to the Google Photos app and tested out Magic Eraser more, not Magic Editor. Magic Editor is only on the Pixel 8s. It really did not give me the results that I wanted. Maybe in some perfect scenarios, yes, where you can have like a completely even background where you then really remove something and whatever is like used to replace it looks the same. Or quite ironically, in low light it actually works well, because if the background was already soft, well, now you replace it with something soft and AI based. Yeah, and everything that I've seen thus far, I've looked up more into like Magic Editor in general. Yeah, it was not very pleasing to me. Nope. It's like a fun gimmick, it's a good editing tool, but like Photoshop announced a ton of extra stuff, and sure, you have to pay more for it, but from everything that I've seen, there are some early Twitter tests about like the Photoshop AI features. They're so much better than Google's in that regard. I was actually, and like DALL-E as well. I was actually really happy. I've said that in like the MKBHD review, where I say that like both DALL-E and Google's AI features are built by people who clearly don't care much about like image integrity almost, like, or the artsy nature of taking photos. But with Photoshop, some of it, that spirit is still maintained. So I really prefer what Photoshop is doing. I just clicked on a 1 month free subscription. I'll test out. I think I'm probably still not getting yet the newest features anyway, but I'll try what is already available and then see how it evolves. Maybe I'll get like an extra month to prolong that. Maybe by the end of the year, once I've learned Photoshop a little, I can actually give you some more detailed impressions.
Which actually does a pretty good job. You can also move people around and change the scale of things as well, which works really well. But a new feature which is super impressive is best take. So for instance, if you're taking a group photo and you've taken multiple images, But in some images, somebody thinks they look better compared to other images where somebody else thinks they look better. Or maybe you've got kids and you're trying to take pictures with them, they keep looking away, but in the one photo that's good, you're looking away. The Pixel will actually look at the series of images and allow you to pick different faces from different images. And I think this is going to be such a popular feature because not only can you use it with images taken on the Pixel, you can use this for images that you've taken on an iPhone, or maybe images that you've taken a few years ago. Right, now for video. I think both take excellent quality video from the rear-facing cameras. The Pixel has actually improved quite a bit compared to the Pixel 7 Pro, which I know.
Look at that, like, for one, the iPhone, as I always say, is not the only camera that has like lens flare issues by any means, but like there is such a big difference with, did you see like the dynamic stop changes as you moved closer to the sun? Basically, nope, like the iPhone wins by such a wide margin.
It did have quite a lot of noise in shadow areas, but once again, I do still prefer the iPhone.
Wait, the stabilization is like, why is it so bad on the Pixel?
Overall, especially when it comes to tricky situations. With
is there? No, there is no rolling shutter here, is it? Like almost when part of an image lags behind?
Range. The iPhone just does such a good
job. No, I think this is just a stabilization issue, which is weird.
Job of maintaining the detail in the highlight.
Also, I would love for people more to test with 4K 60. I love 60 FPS. It allows you to do like slow-mo at 2x, which would then still come down to 30, which is still an acceptable frame rate. Apple has a Dolby Vision HDR support at 4K, at up to 4K 60. No problem. ProRes 4K 60 unfortunately only works if you are outputting to external storage, but now you also have like ProRes log. So the fact that Apple does all of that with potentially 60 FPS, I don't know if there is any like image breakdown or like worse quality once you go to 60 FPS on the Pixel, but I would like to see that just as a comparison. I know that 60 FPS on the iPhone will not be as good as 30 FPS as well when it comes to raw image quality, but overall I do still prefer the 60 FPS look.
And the shadow areas. And this is also the case when we use HDR video, which has been shot on both devices and then converted to standard dynamic range, so you can see it here. Once again, the iPhone doing a better job with dynamic range. This was also the case with the ultra-wide camera, better overall dynamic range on the iPhone compared to the Pixel. Now, I know what a lot of you guys will be saying, that Google did announce that they've got a new feature called Video Boost, which will give you much better dynamic range after being processed in the cloud. This is not here yet. I'm looking forward to testing it out in December when it does.
It also doesn't count. Like, just being completely honest, it just doesn't count. Like, I'm not uploading, like, I'm not forcing myself to record in a sort of raw-ish format that I then upload to Google to make it better. At that point, why wouldn't I record like potentially ProRes log at 60 FPS, have like a ton of both temporal data and actual image sharpness related data, and then edit it myself? And someone will be like, well, Google does it for you. And I'm like, yeah, but like, this is happening in the cloud. The only reason literally why it's like Pixel 8 Pro exclusive is I think they know that like obviously the large sensor and maybe the well, the main sensor is the same on the Pixel 8 and 8 Pro, but maybe the slightly higher clock Tensor G3 with a little more RAM allows them to like capture a little more raw data for their video, and then that data can be used in the cloud. But like the iPhone has had like ProRes for a while, so I'm really wondering why it's really something that is now Pixel 8 Pro exclusive. Sounds like an awesome feature that Google could be charging for with Google One. It's like, oh, you already have your 100 gigabytes of storage or your terabyte of storage. Like, if your video is already on our servers, and if you took it as a raw video, just let us work with it, right? At least if it's like in a certain raw standard. I don't quite know how it would work with something like ProRes RAW or anything like that.
You're definitely going to want to subscribe to see that.
No, nah. That I don't have to subscribe for that. When the feature comes out, I'll check out the channel.
I'm not sure how practical that will be, because every single time you're going to have to let it process in the cloud and then come back, whereas on...
You also have to capture 2 video files, one for the rawish one that you keep obviously on your phone if you want to share it right away and stuff.
The iPhone, you're going to get better dynamic range straight out of the box, but we shall see at the time. For low light video, both of them do have those lens flare balls if there are some light sources in the video, so that's pretty much the same on both. But when we did get to extreme low light situations, then the iPhone was better with less noise, as you can see from these examples here. Once again, when we do have video boost, this is supposed to improve low light on the Pixel as well, so we'll take a look at that when it's out. With the iPhone, you can also record in ProRes with logs, so this is a flat picture profile. It's great if you're a pro filmmaker and you want to use some of that footage which you want to grade later on. And for stabilization, so after doing lots of testing, both are very, very stable at 4K. And when we do use the respective stabilization modes, then once again, both are very, very good. However, the iPhone does let you do action mode at around 2.7K, which is a higher resolution compared to the 1080p when you're doing stabilization on the Pixel. For slow motion, both are okay. Slow motion hasn't really changed over the past few years. I'm assuming not many people really use it that much. Here you can see in this example, the Pixel is sharper. However, the iPhone does have the ability to shoot slow motion from all of the different lenses, the ultra wide, the primary, as well as the telephoto. On the Pixel, you can only shoot slow motion from the primary camera.
What?
Why? Camera, both are very good, but once again, the iPhone, better dynamic range overall. The iPhone also has better detail. If you look towards my beard, the Pixel is starting to go a little bit soft. For stabilization from the selfie cameras, I'd say it's a bit of a draw. I've watched them again and again, and I think both are very, very good. And for cinematic video, so you saw a preview at the start of this video, and I think it's easy to say that the iPhone is superior for cinematic video. You've got that LiDAR scanner, which...
You also have like real problems when you look at the edge of the picture, like where the grass is in the front left for the Pixel 8, or like the right to be more precise, but the way I look at it, it's like, it's really weird how it changes from in focus to not to blurred. Yeah, the iPhone is way superior here.
In my opinion, gives you better edge detection. But also, the Pixel only can do the cinematic blur at 1080p, whereas the iPhone can do it at 4K. You can also use continuous zoom when you are filming with cinematic mode on the iPhone, and the iPhone also lets you use cinematic mode from the front-facing camera. You can't do this on the Pixel. And finally, with
I'm just starting to understand just how many like software restrictions there are, where Google really like optimizes their algorithms first and foremost for like the main camera, and then afterwards they go into like the ultra wide and the telephoto. But sometimes there will be like weird discrepancies between those, as we saw with like slow motion, and then the front-facing camera will be like the very last to support any cool stuff. It's like such a weird omission. Like, again, I don't care much about the front-facing camera, but why would you have that disparity? I really don't understand.
Edit the amount of blur that you want, as well as the point of focus after the fact. This is something that you cannot do on the Pixel. Right, for autofocus, it was very, very close. I'm gonna call it a draw. Even in low light with a black card, this is my extreme test that I do for autofocus.
Yeah, I actually agree. The speed of the autofocus is very, very comparable. The quality, though, is really not.
We did really well. Finally, audio. Which one records better audio? You can have a listen. Audio tests on the Google Pixel 8 Pro and the iPhone 15 Pro Max.
Yeah, I feel like and I've heard that from like some other reviewers at this point, the Pixel is like by default pretty aggressive, almost like it does that like audio eraser thing, right? I know the iPhone has like something they call like audio zoom, but by default, yeah, the Pixel will more aggressively like ignore outside noise. Overall quality, though, I have to give the iPhone when it comes to just the sound of his voice. Like the benefit here, but it's not meaningful. I would not like it wouldn't like change my decision which phone to buy either way.
There's a lot of background noise going on here with all of the cars, so this will be a really good test to see and hear which one sounds better. Now, I think it was pretty clear that the Pixel had cleaner audio with less background noise, and that's because the Pixel...
Well, no, I mean, it literally had like less background noise, but it did not, like, I guess it has cleaner audio overall, but when we're talking about the actual voice portion of it, it sounded worse, and I don't even have the best ears by any point when it comes to, but that was clearly apparent to me.
does have something called speech enhancement, and this is on by...
Oh yeah, of course, speech enhancement. I'm sure that will make the voice sound pretty natural.
Selfie camera. The Pixel also has audio magic eraser, which uses AI to remove...
As I've said before, an impressive feature overall. Seems to not be fully perfect, at least not when you're working with the audio quality from a smartphone. Maybe if you record it from like a professional microphone, it would recognize the layers of audio better. It's an impressive feature. I actually would like to have something like this on the iPhone by default,
which you can apply after the fact. And you can use this on videos that you've shot many years ago, or even not on the Pixel, as long as they're in the Google Photos app. So we have a lot of background noise, which you can...
Oh yeah, okay, that's cool. By the way, the iPhone has something like this by default for, well, as an option, but it's pretty easy to activate. That's why I say by default. For like, when you record audio, right, there are like audio modes, or like audio recording modes to be more precise, and there you can like tune if you have if you actually want to enlarge like the listening space, right? That way, if you have somebody else in the room, maybe on the other end, and you want that person on the voice call to still hear that person, you have a mode for that as well. But if you are having like background noises like running water, for example, then you can go with voice isolation. So actually pretty versatile in that regard from the iPhone.
Maybe here, or maybe not, thanks to the audio magic eraser. Now, I know some of you guys are going to be saying, yes, but the iPhone has the voice isolation. However, this only works when you're making a video call or a phone call. It works really, really well, but I couldn't find a way to apply this when you are shooting video. I'm sure it's something that will be possible, and maybe Apple will introduce it at a later point. So that is the SuperSaf style camera comparison between the Google Pixel 8 Pro and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. What are my overall conclusions? Well, I think both of these have excellent cameras with amazing images and video, but a lot of it is going to come down to your personal preference. I think the Pixel does take the edge when it comes to dynamic range, especially from the ultra-wide camera, which I do prefer. It also
ultra-wide camera, I agree. Dynamic range, I don't agree with his preference. I probably agree with him from a very objective standpoint. When it comes to getting details out of shadows, I don't consider that such a needed feature once the actual image looks balanced and nice. I do agree with him on the ultra-wide camera. Pixel win there.
Compared to the iPhone, which you might find a little bit more pleasing.
Yeah, front-facing camera, huge iPhone win. It's really not close in my opinion.
And it has lots of these really useful software features which will allow you to do things that you're simply not going to be able to do.
Oh yeah, I think he said like, what, did he prefer the Pixel? Because right now he's listing like stuff where the Pixel 1, I think he means like, oh, the front-facing camera looks more natural to him, but not actually more pleasing.
On the iPhone, such as the Audio Magic Eraser, Magic Editor, as well as Best Take. The iPhone, on the other hand, very consistent, a better telephoto camera in my opinion, better portraits, as well as better low light images. And once again, I still think it has the best video on any smartphone. That's what I think anyway. What do you guys think? Drop me a comment.
Next year will actually be really interesting. Like, I don't know if Google will have a larger main sensor next year. It probably depends on who exactly they partner up with. I think they get like their sensors for really cheap from Samsung, and it will be hard for them to give it up. They have like a relationship with Samsung for like modems, their processors, and their main sensors. I think the other sensors are probably also Samsung. Obviously also with the screens, but then again, Samsung display is usually separate from the other divisions in that regard. So yeah, I'm kind of inclined to believe that Samsung next year will not have an actually larger sensor, from what I understand, with the S24 Ultra. So I doubt the Pixel 9 Pro would have a much larger sensor. Which means the iPhone next year, definitely the Pros are getting the 1 by 1.15 inch sensor, which is like 15% larger or something than the current sensor. I think that would put the iPhone really in like a league of its own. Like, I know that there are like 1-inch sensors by like Xiaomi and stuff, but like their image processing algorithms are nowhere close to like in many ways even Samsung, I would say. Maybe if you capture like a raw image, that works well. But then when it comes to Pixel and then iPhone, again, I do have to say, I don't really know where the iPhone actually wins based on algorithms, and where it wins by maybe because they prefer Sony sensors over Samsung sensors. But in the end, as a consumer, it doesn't really matter that much to me. In most ways, the iPhone won basically everything for me that matters except for ultra wide, and then technically I can give the Pixel a better edge in like raw dynamic range processing if you really wanted to. But I don't think that the dynamic range improvements actually made the overall image look better. So but that's just my preference. When it comes to the zoom camera, I'm shocked how much better the iPhone ended up being. I know that the original Pixel or like the 5x zoom on the Pixels was never that great, but I saw it in some scenarios win even like against Samsung's 10X sometimes, because it was better stabilized. But yeah, it was no competition to the iPhone. I think the main camera is more consistent as well. I think low light images are coming out more pleasing on the iPhone overall. I think portrait mode is like no comparison almost, because every image he showed was better on the iPhone, which usually is not something that I expect. I expect Google to actually perform pretty well in portrait. But then you also have like less restrictions on the iPhone, right? You can capture portrait mode also from like the native 5x zoom camera, instead of having to like zoom in on the main sensor on an already existing portrait, right? So no, to me, the iPhone really wins. And then you add videography on top of it. Quite honestly, I am a little disappointed. I think Google probably needs a new processor at this point, really, to handle all that data. And I wouldn't be surprised if like the Samsung sensors, I think this is like, I don't want to say anything wrong, but like it has a name, right? Pixel image sensor, it's like GNV or something. Yeah, it's a GNV sensor instead of like a GN2, right? A GN2 is what would be like in the S23 Ultra. What is GN2 sensor? Wait, or is it, no, the GN2 will be in the next one, right? Now Samsung has announced a successor to the ISOCELL G9, one called ISOCELL G9 II. This is a 15 megapixel sensor as well, but it offers, oh, it's a larger sensor at 1 by 1.12 and bigger pixels, wait, what? Wait, why is there, wait, would that sensor even be? Because it's an article from February 2021. now I'm so okay. There's like an article to this, like Google's next flagship. Oh, okay. So the rumors were pointing to it being like a 1 by 1.12 inch sensor, but it wasn't. It's a 1 by 1.3 inch sensor. So that's the difference with like GNV. But does that mean that the S24 Ultra actually gets a GN2 sensor? Because that would be great. Samsung is rumored to feature a 50 megapixel 3x telephoto, 200 megapixel main camera. Okay, this gets so confusing. Oh, the 50 megapixel telephoto camera would be the GN2 sensor, but I believe there are also like different sub variants of the exact size, because I cannot imagine that they would put like a 1 by 1.2 inch sensor for one of the two telephoto cameras. Oh my god, I'm now so confused by all the rumors. But I guess we'll see. I don't want to give you any wrong information. This is why I'm not putting anything on the screen. Yeah, it seems to be like there's some like weird rumor differences. Maybe it's also a little bit my lack of like familiarity with the exact specs of like Android sensors. Especially Samsung sensors, I should be more precise. I do usually know my way around like Sony sensors. But yeah, so my conclusion from this is the iPhone absolutely maintains its smartphone camera king status. I think where it wins, where it loses against the Pixel, it usually loses out in small ways. I think where it wins in pretty major ways. I did not expect it to be that profound this year. I honestly think that Google's refusal to really put in a flagship processor are really starting to hammer home the point that if you don't have a flagship sensor nor a flagship processor, your algorithms will not save you either. Like, by the way, obviously they are saved, right? Because they still have a great camera overall, but it's just not iPhone level good. And quite honestly, when you consider that the Pixel 8 Pro is $1,000 for 128 gigabytes, and then close to 1,100, I believe a little bit below that, for 256. And then the iPhone 15 Pro Max is $1,200 with 256 gigabytes, and you get like better cameras, a better processor, better cellular connectivity. You lose out on some small things like Wi-Fi 7, but I don't even have a Wi-Fi 6E router. I definitely don't have a Wi-Fi 7 router. So yeah, I actually would say the fact that Apple refused to increase prices this year, they increased the base price on the 15 Pro Max because they also, of course, changed the base storage config, but it resulted in the 256 gigabyte model being the same price as it was last year. So yeah, quite honestly, yeah, I think the iPhone is actually a better value than the Pixel 8 Pro. I know it has like better battery life. I've heard that the Pixel 8 Pro has better battery life than the 7 Pro, but the 7 Pro was pretty bad in several ways. The Pixel 8 Pro also is known to heat up, and it's not a software issue like with the iPhone that was fixed. Again, I'm keeping an open mind, but my mind is really getting shut down because I've now watched and read some data here. Obviously, this is the most comprehensive camera review that I have seen. I've seen some benchmarks where in tests where the iPhone like starts 15% better in GPU performance, the iPhone then maintains 85% to 80% of its GPU performance, and then the Pixel will start at like lower performance than the iPhone. It actually starts with the performance of where the iPhone tapers down to because it heats up and throttles, but then it can only maintain 60 to 65% of that peak performance, which seems to be a little better than some of the early 55% results that we've seen. But yeah, heat definitely isn't solved here. And then in terms of CPU tasks, the iPhone is like 67% faster when it comes to single core results. It's 60% faster when it comes to multi-core results. I've seen like I believe it was like Android Police, there was an article article of like that the Tensor G3 is the best smartphone chip out today because it has this AI focus and it has AI algorithms that wouldn't be able to run on the A15, the A17. This person said that without providing any machine learning benchmarks or anything else like that. So yeah, there's a lot of copium going on. People, I think, because Pixel has started selling better and better over the last year or two, maybe even, people were kind of like expecting, oh, of course, it's still an underdog, but man, it's an underdog that really overperforms, and they finally fixed like battery life and stuff like that. But now it's not the smartphone camera king anymore. In some ways, I would probably prefer the S23 Ultra. Now, they finally have a really modern screen that gets really bright. That is nice to see. I wonder how well that brightness is maintained once you actually do something intensive with the processor. I know it does not work too well on the iPhone when it comes to maintaining like a full 2000 nits. But yeah, there's just so much going on in my head when it comes to Pixel 8. So it will be interesting to see how it all pans out fully in the end. For now, really seems like the iPhone is winning on many fronts, and the camera is one of them. Let's briefly see if he has anything else to add.
Let me know your thoughts. If you found this video useful, then once again, do consider subscribing and hit.
Okay, there's nothing more. And that's why there's nothing more from me except to say a big thank you if you're one of the many new subscribers. A big thank you if you're watching this and you haven't yet subscribed. Please consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell so you actually know when I go live next time. Please consider watching much of my older content. Some of it is still relatively relevant, and I just hope to see you guys next time. This is Marc Tech tuning out.